Well, I'm Phil.
And I'm Phil.
And this is the Phil and Phil Show for another week of shenanigans. So let's let everybody in. We have a bunch of people, so I'm just going to admit all these people and we'll see what happens.
Oh, wow. That means...
We just need to make sure that we turn people's videos off. Don't know why, like, darn it, it's just brought them all on his video. Hang on.
I'll mute them, Phil.
Okay, you got it?
I've got the mutes.
And you'll turn their videos off too, huh?
Yeah. Are you doing it? Okay, there's 3 of us left.
We got the 3.
Hey. Welcome, folks. So tonight we've got the lovely Shirah that's here doing live blood again. So the difference with the show we did before with Shirah is that she's actually doing a live blood demonstration. So it's going to be, I'm going to put my teeth back in, a live blood demonstration. So it's going to be really interesting because you guys are going to be able to see right from the start, from the pricking of the finger to setting the blood, to putting it under the microscope and showing you what's going on. So I think she's incredibly brave and courageous to do this, because when I had live blood taken, I felt very vulnerable, and it really is like sharing your whole, well, it's not like, it is sharing your whole inner terrain, and it's kind of like standing there with your pants down is how I felt. So yeah,
I would much rather do this than stand here with my pants down.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, welcome, Shirah, again. Fantastic. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your willingness to share this with people, because out of the modalities of healing that I've done over the 25 or 30 years, this was by far the most exciting and real for me. There's no hiding, there's no nonsense. It's just, this is what's going on, this is how it is, and this is what we can do about it. So over to you, Shirah. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was a really lovely introduction, and it's lovely to see you guys again as well. So I'm here in my clinic and I have my microscope. I'm going to turn it around so you can see my beautiful beast. Yes, it's a fantastic tool. I actually wish everybody could have their own microscope and do this for themselves, because it's such a fantastic way to guide yourself and map your health. When you start looking at your own cells and watching them change and see how you can make changes and create these changes in yourself, then it becomes really empowering. Can I just say that I can hear lots of water running? I don't know who that is.
That's Phil.
So yeah, and once you start to see your own cells, you can understand health a lot more, and you can understand your own health a lot more and how it all works and how to fix it for yourself as well. But of course, not everybody has their own microscope, so you have to come to people like me who have studied and learnt everything there is to know about blood and nutrition and what we are seeing in the blood and how what it all means. So I am going to take my blood sample right now live, because some of you may think that you need to have quite a lot of blood in the sample, but you don't. It's just 1 drop of blood, and 1 drop of blood has millions of cells in it, and within those millions of cells there will be it's almost like a holographic imprint of the rest of your blood. So in that 1 drop you will have the same proportions of the different cells as you would in the whole of your blood. It's representative of the whole of your blood, because the cells are so small and there are so many of them in that 1 drop. So it's usually just from the fingertip. You take it. My hands are quite cold. It's really cold in the office. I haven't put the heating on. So I'm going to just press it. I don't know if that's you can see the blood on my finger.
Yep.
Right.
Beautiful. So Phil's saying while you're doing this, can you talk about the microscope a little bit?
Yeah, I can, but let me just get the sample, because
Yeah, absolutely.
that would be a silly thing to ruin, wouldn't it?
Yes.
We have to be really careful with the blood. We want to take it as fresh as possible, and we don't want to actually touch the finger at all with the slides, because we really want live, fresh blood that is as close as possible to what it would be like circulating in your body. So we don't want to damage any of the cells by impacting them. So it's a, you know, it's a really fine, precise cell sample taking. You have to do it quite quickly because you don't want anything to oxidize or clot. So there's a bit of an art to it, but once you practice, you can get it really, really good. Now I'm doing what's called the dry blood, and you can see there's quite a big drop of blood on my finger, and I leave that to start coagulating and clotting. This is the dry blood that I'm doing now, and the dry blood is a very different way of looking at the blood, because the clotting process is a really complex, multi-level process that involves a lot of changes in the blood, and it needs a lot of different ingredients in order for all of those changes to happen properly. And the clotting process is so vital to our health. It keeps us alive, and our blood, as it circulates through our body, will go in and out of different states of thickness and clotting. And obviously the biggest factor is to stop us from bleeding to death if we ever have an injury. So when we're letting it sit on the finger, we're letting all that cascade, that clotting cascade, start to happen, so we can see if there's any gaps in that process, and that gives us indications of things that are going on biochemically. And with this one, we're tapping, and we are making sure we do touch the finger with the slide. What we're doing is we're wicking off layers of blood until there's really nothing left. We do 8 layers. And then cover that over so there's no dust and no bits of fluff can fall on it as it's drying, because that can ruin the picture. It interferes with what you're looking at. So that's that sample done. Fingers all fine, just a little tiny drop of blood, so that's all healed up. So the microscope, this is not a hobbyist microscope. It's quite a high-tech microscope, and that's because of not just the level of magnification that's necessary to see cells, but also because of the light and the way the light has to pass through the blood. In order to see anything in the blood, you really need dark field is really good for seeing things in the blood. Dark field is a different way of lighting. It gives you a dark background, and it illuminates different cellular parts. And if you were to shine the light straight through the sample, you wouldn't see very much at all. You just see ghosts of cells, and it would be all white and bright with just tiny differences, and it doesn't give you that much information. So that's bright field, which we use with the dry blood, but with the live blood we use dark field. It scatters the light in a different way. So as soon as the blood has been taken, I try to get it up onto the microscope within a few minutes. Now, I have not seen my own blood for a long time. This is probably the longest I've gone without seeing my own blood. Just got loads of other things going on. And usually I look at it quite a lot because it's research and I find it fascinating. So I don't know what I'm going to see. And like Phil said, it is quite exposing. You're sort of looking at your own inner cells. And when I'm teaching this in class, when I was doing the trainings, people were very reluctant to show their own blood, especially as I was training nutritionists and naturopaths and people that this is their profession. And we'd like to think that we follow our own, we walk our own talk, and we do what we should do, but life is life, and it impacts all of us, stress and everything else. So sometimes people are like, oh, has that detox worked? Oh my God, is the binge that I had last night on biscuits going to show up in my blood? What's going to happen? So it's quite funny. I haven't binged on biscuits, but I have just eaten. I had my dinner before coming out. So we will see in my blood, my food basically will have been absorbed through the small intestines, and it will now be circulating in my blood, broken down and trying to be delivered to all the cells and all the tissues. Right, let me get this up. Any questions so far? Because this bit I'm going to have to focus here and do this. I'll see if I can share my screen.
Yeah, there's no questions so far apart from Phil's interested in the microscope.
Ah, well, I did answer. Did I? Well, have you any more questions on the microscope? Ask.
What's the
I'm
magnification level of that? Did you say that?
Right. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm just setting up, getting ready to look at the blood. So what you're looking at now is a tiny 2.5 magnification, 2.5x. And you can just see tiny little specks. So you can just work out that there's something there. They just look like grains. I'm going to go up to 10x now. And when you go up to 10x, you start to see the circles, the discs of the red blood cells. And you can see some white dots as well. Those white dots are white blood cells. Oh, there's quite a lot of white blood cells. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay. Great. So then I go up to 100x, which is 1,000 magnification. And I'll turn the light right up so you can see. So can you all see that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
great.
That's lovely.
Oh
Okay,
my, this is so exciting.
So this, so you can see all these little white dots buzzing around, yeah, in the background. That's my food. They're little particles of protein and yeah, carbs and different molecules of food that have been digested and absorbed into the plasma. And that will have an effect on the blood cells because it changes the viscosity of the plasma and how the blood cells move about. So everything you're seeing here, the black that you're seeing is plasma. And then you've got all those circles, which are the red blood cells, drifting about in this plasma.
You're looking pretty healthy. You're looking good.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to find one little bit that looks good. Very easy.
Well, come on, find us some bad stuff then.
Okay, I have straight away almost. So these are white blood cells. You can see why they're called white blood cells, because they're white. And what is going on inside them are these white granules. And those granules are full of enzymes and cellular products that are designed to digest bacteria and anything that shouldn't be in the blood. And usually when you first take a blood sample, these white blood cells will be a bit shocked on the slide and they don't move. But after a few minutes, they should warm up or get used to it and start to move again. At the moment, they're round and they're not moving. So that is a sign of this. If they don't start moving, then I will, there's lots of them that look like that, I will start to take that as a sign of there's something happening in the immune system. The white blood cells don't have enough vitamin C and enough zinc possibly, and they're not moving, they're not motile because they're supposed to move, and it takes a lot of energy for that. And that sort of zinc and vitamin C are really good for helping them become more motile. And in my house at the minute we have my eldest son has been sick, so he's had some sort of snotty cold. I feel fine, absolutely fine, but from looking at my blood, I know already that my body is fighting something. And if I don't support it, as in I will go home and I will start upping my vitamin C. I'll probably take 4 times as much as I'm doing now, and have an hourly rate until I can feel I've reached a limit. And that will help, hopefully.
So what type of vitamin C are you going to use for that?
I'm going to use ascorbic acid. I use the same one that Linus Pauling used and manufactured, because the factory is still going and it's in Scotland, and it's the only non-GMO pure vitamin C.
This is Quali C, right?
Yeah, from NutriCenter. Yeah,
Right.
Quali C. Yeah, you can see, look, I've just moved my slide a little bit and there are lots more white blood cells. So there is rising levels of neutrophils. And this happens when they've been told been told by some chemicals that have been produced by other cells in the immune system, we need you in numbers because we have an invader and we've got to keep it down. So they are doing their job at the minute. And I might feel a bit fatigued because of this. I might feel a little bit run down, or I might not feel anything yet. This could be predicting what's going to happen in the next few days. I may start to feel. So just by looking at this, I may save myself a day of feeling grotty.
Is that right in the middle there? Is that a dying cell?
Yeah.
So it's like an old cell. It's probably going to be recycled or whatever, right?
Yeah, and they will always be in the blood.
That's normal. Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah, it's normal. You'll always have one or two, but obviously you're looking for numbers. You're not just looking for one or two things. You're looking for numbers of things. So, you know, when you're analyzing a slide, you do have to have a certain level of discipline about how much of the sample you look at, and the way in which you scan it, so that you have a system and you don't miss things. That way you can really be quite accurate, actually, with what you're seeing in the blood, whether it's cells that are too big, cells that are too small, cells that look abnormal. You can give it a rating, you can give it a level, a score, and that will give you an idea of like how important, how big of an impact is this particular indication that I'm seeing in the blood having on this person. You know, how important is it to fix this, and why is it there, which is the most important thing. Why would there be an issue? So let me see if I can find some other.
What's that kind of stuff around those cells? Like, is that just debris? Is that food? Is that...
Let me just look. No, right. So that is on the slide. Okay.
Oh.
So these slides are really high quality. They're probably the highest quality slides you can get, but they're manufactured. And in any manufacturing process, you're going to have artifacts, scratches, machinery, fragments of glass. And this, you can tell it's on the slide because when I'm focusing on the red blood cells and they're in clear focus, the background, that area that it's on is very muffled and sort of fuzzy. But when I focus on it, you can see you can focus on it and everything else goes out of focus. So that tells me it's not on the same plane as the blood. It's actually on the slide. So you learn these things the more you look at blood, and you know, you realize, don't pay any attention to that. That's not even important. Don't look at that. That's part of the slide. You learn to ignore a lot. Right. So here's a cell that's moving. This one here is moving. You see? You can see this is bulging out here, this area. So it's moving towards probably some, what we can't see, which is some bacterial fragments that are on the edge of the red blood cell. So they get called, the white blood cells move around in the blood depending on, you know, what's attracting them. Let me see, something more interesting. Okay. So there's another cell here that we haven't seen yet, which is this one here. That is a lymphocyte. And that's a white blood cell as well, but it would be part of the lymphocytes are the T cells and the B cells. So they're the ones that have manufacture antibodies, specific antibodies, and respond to specific antigens, and they have memory, so they can they can be triggered to produce the antibodies for an infection that they've already come across. They go after tumors, they go after cancer cells. There's a different range of them. This one just looks like a normal one. There's nothing unusual about this one. It's just a normal one. So the cells, the white blood, of all the white blood cells, it's the neutrophils that you have the most of, which are these white ones here. You should have quite a few of those. They're the most numerous. And then, so 66% of all white blood cells should be these ones. And about 30% of your white blood cells will be the lymphocytes, these ones here. And you're looking for abnormalities in these cells to give you any indication. But again, you always need more than one cell to look abnormal. So you can see how my cells are stacked together. They're on top of each other here. That's a really mild indication of dehydration, oxidation, because what's supposed to happen in the blood is that you have these charges on the membranes, the positive charges, positive ions around the membranes, and they repel each other. In fact, it's more complex than that. There are layers of negative and layers of positive, but it's basically because of what's happening on the inside of the cell and what's on the outside of the cell. So you've got one charge on the inside and one charge on the outside, and that's called the membrane potential. And you want that to be strong, because if that's strong, these cells will stay separated like magnets. They repel against each other, which is what you want when you want things to circulate. And you need your cells to reach through the capillaries to deliver the oxygen. And if they're all stuck together, they can't do that. But this is quite a mild indication. People can have quite a strong indication. They have all that rouleau where they're really stacked up against each other and squashed like coin rolls. Now this could be because I've just eaten, but yeah, I do feel actually a little bit dehydrated.
Could it be under stress, like end of the day? Does it vary? Yeah. I mean, it probably changes, like if you're tired as well, right?
Yeah, it does. It changes during the day. It changes during the seasons as well. So there is a natural ebb and flow in the blood. So you'd have to remember what time you're taking your blood and what it looks like. But usually I would have fasted, and I ask my clients to not eat, so that when you're looking at the plasma, you're not seeing all this interference, all this noise from food.
So is it all of that food, or is it some of it microzymas? What do you call it?
Yeah, some of it could be microzymas or proteins.
Which is what? Tell us what that is.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do once we've had a little bit more of a scan, in case there's anything more interesting, I'm going to do something which we call stressing the slide, which releases the pleomorphic forms. So this is where we diverge from classical hematology in blood analysis, because this is not something that mainstream.
Right, it's controversial, right? Pleomorphism is controversial.
It's controversial because, I mean, I don't think it will be controversial in the future, because I think that we are coming full circle with our understanding in science when we start breaking things down and looking at smaller and smaller parts. And you know, we've got the DNA, and we've got the genome, and we've got all these ideas, and we used to think that the genome would give us all the answers to life and what makes life possible, and that something can only be living if it has DNA. But that's been shown not to be true. We don't have enough genes in our genome to be considered complex enough to create this living organism. So we know there are other things that are important, and there's you know, there's also the discovery of the prions, which are what cause mad cow disease, and these are proteinaceous particles that devoid of DNA. So the reason that was such a huge discovery, and the guy that discovered it, you know, there was all kinds of prizes being bandied about because it was so groundbreaking, was because they realized that a particle can be infectious without DNA, which was considered impossible, you know, because DNA is everything, and DNA isn't everything now. We know that there is dark DNA matter that they cannot ascribe to any functions, and of all the genome that we have, only something like The 80 to 90% of our genome is unaccounted for. We can't tell what this stuff does. So there's all this dark matter, and there's all these other things. So I think eventually we may come full circle and go back to looking at the things that these other, like Enderlein and Béchamp and George Bernard. So when microscopes were first booming, and you could finally see these microorganisms and cells, and we knew that we hadn't known cells before. We didn't know what caused infections before. Once you were able to start looking at those things, I mean, it's a whole world that opens up. It's very exciting. But they were doing so much observation. They weren't ignoring things, and they could see these things in the blood that moved a lot like what you're seeing now in my picture there. You can see these little things moving about. I know that that's food, but some of it may not be food, but I can't differentiate through the microscope unless somebody has fasted, and then I know it's definitely not food. But this idea that there are these proteinaceous particles that are actually the seed of life. This is what Mike Rizimers and George Bernard believed, because he took a sample of chalk, which is ancient. Chalk is it's broken down animals, isn't it? And he rehydrated it in his laboratory and then looked at it under the microscope, and he kept finding these particles. Long story short, he did experiments that showed that these were particles that could become life in these samples. And they couldn't be killed, they couldn't be broken down any further, they couldn't be destroyed by heat or by cold. They were really indestructible. And these things could be transposed to prions. These things could be the same as prions. Now, prions, which are the cause of mad cow disease, and amyloid plaques, which are now thought to be the cause of Alzheimer's, they're all made of proteinaceous particles that have these different qualities for some reason. And it's possible that what we're looking at through the microscope in blood, when we're talking about enderlein and enderlein pleomorphic forms, it's possible that these could be part and parcel of the same thing. But these forms change shape, change activity, depending on the terrain that they are in. So it's all down to, again, the terrain, the environment, because essentially we're just one big ecological system with all these microorganisms in us, and these are the smallest, most primordial microorganisms that are with us, with all mammals. They're in all mammals, and they're with us from birth. They're part of our immune system, they're part of the builders of life, and they're also part of the destroyers of life too. So when we die, or if our terrain changes and we become really acidic, they can ferment, and they can digest, and they can congest, and they can cause breakdowns of tissue. And of course, all of that comes, any change in terrain also invites in external germs. So, there's endogenous, there's exogenous. So you can have these external germs that come in, and if your terrain is rough, they take advantage. And so you can have different infections. But because those sorts of infections are driven by bacteria that are bigger than this, much bigger than this, they can be analyzed, they can be cultured, they can be broken down to be a certain species of bacteria, certain genera, certain, all these different names that they can give them, TB or pneumonia, or all these different bacterial names, or viruses and things like that. They can break them down. But these guys, these are smaller, and they can't be broken down. They can't be really cultured. They can't be cultured in the laboratory. So that's why it's controversial. So it's almost like ahead of its time, but I think we may get there eventually. And even now, you've got PubMed articles that are saying that actually there are areas in the body that we considered sterile. So there's lots of these paradigms that we've believed, and we've carried the torch of this dogma that scientists just laid down and said, no, this is the rule. This is the rule. These areas are sterile. The blood is sterile. Spinal fluid is sterile. There's all this sterility everywhere. The amniotic fluid is sterile. It's not. And we now are examining this thanks to the microbiome research that's exploded in the last 20 years. So I'm pretty confident that we will eventually discover more and more about this sort of stuff, but who knows? For now, it's controversial.
A private question came in. I've seen my microscope blood cells that have been thorny with black dots inside. Is that bacteria? Is there anything
No,
that...
so here's one. I can
go
show
ahead.
one that what they're talking about. Look, see this one here. I mean, this looks thorny. There is a echinocyte is the name for this sort of cell, and it's known as thorn apple. This is a German word. I think it's echinocyte. It might be different. Anyway, there's a couple of names for each of these hematological terms. There's often varied names, but this is what he's talking about. I think you can see there's a kind of little black dots. You can see little things sticking out. Anyway, what that is a cell whose cytoplasm has shrunk, and the cell membranes have stretched, so they've got this wibbly edges where they've blown at it's a shrunken balloon type thing with these little bulbous areas sticking out. Now that's, in classical hematological terms, that is just a cell that is maybe old and is dying. And if this was going through the liver, it would have been culled. It could have been taken out and recycled. But if there are a lot of them, it's a sign of oxidation. So the lipids on the membranes have been oxidized, free radical damage. They are, and lipids are very susceptible. Fats are highly oxidizing. They can be oxidized really easily. So it's possible that when someone has a lot of these going on, their cells are oxidizing easily. So there's some acidity in the system that is causing that. So let me see if I can scratch, I'll stress the slide and see if I can break out some of these bacterial forms. It'd be really boring if there's nothing there. There's bound to be. I'm gonna do it now. So this involves applying a bit of pressure to the slide. You're basically speeding up the aging process of the cells. Now, in my laboratory here, it's a clinic with a microscope, but I sometimes leave clients' blood on the slide and let it age naturally and check it out. So this is a sort of cheats way of aging it. You can see how it's all broken up. I've mushed it around. I'm no longer looking at the red blood cells, really, to see their health. I'm trying to find the broken up cells to see if I've released any bacterial forms, because they like to, they build on the cells, on the membranes. Sometimes difficult to find. Here it is, right. Okay. So I've really changed the chemistry of the blood sample now, and it's gone acidic because it's been sitting there for a while, so it will naturally age. In the body, this blood would have gone through the liver quite a few times by now, so it's always monitoring it, taking out, balancing the pH. It's very tightly controlled by the body. And here it hasn't been. It's obviously aged, so there is acidity rising. That's going to have an effect on the cells. But now I've rubbed the slide, it's going to be even more acidic, and this allows these bacterial forms to start to feed off that acidity and change their form to adapt. But it's also revealing what is already there. And under normal circumstances, in a very homeostatically controlled blood pH, they can't move about too much. They can't evolve to the more the higher forms, which are more destructive to the body. They have to stay as they are in that pH. So you can see lots of fuzziness around these cells. They've broken down. First of all, they're not as bright. And although we had seen a lot of these particles moving around earlier, there are actually now more of them. So these, I think, are going to be the pleomorphic forms. These are called macrosympatites, which is a large globule of these protein particles stuck together. There will also be strings. I don't know if you can see here, there's a very fine string. I'll turn the light right up. You can see more. There you go.
Oh, wow.
There you go. So this string here, this will be lots of these protein particles strung together. That's called a chondrite. So they form in different ways three-dimensionally. And there's some here that are sort of moving, wiggling about like worms. And what they can do is they can then become double walled, and they can have nuclei, and then in the middle as well. And they can be like that right from the get-go. And that's when somebody's really congested and they have quite high levels of acidity in their tissues. But a lot of this fuzziness around these cells, where they look like fuzzy balls, that's a sign of sort of fermentation. That's a sign of candida, which we all have, but it's a sign of rising fermentation, which is typically my picture, because I've recovered from ME, chronic fatigue. So it's always there lurking. The candida never goes away. It's always waiting for its opportunity.
But this is still a healthy blood sample. It still looks healthy. It's not like,
no,
even with the
it's
stress.
not. Yeah, it's not really bad. But interestingly, yeah, I've stressed it. So now I couldn't really, for reading my own live blood, I wouldn't be reading the health of the cells so much anymore, because I've ruined them. I do that first, and then this is done at the end, just for my own understanding of what's happening in the tissues. Because some people have teeth problems, infections in their teeth, very low level, low grade infections, and it could be in the tissues, it could be in scar tissue, it could be around implants, if there are implants anywhere. And those things can harbor a lot of bacteria in the tissues, and sometimes they leak out into the blood, and it causes, a lot of tension in the body and a lot of stress on the body when it comes to trying to quench that bacteria. So sometimes by scratching the blood, I can see, oh, okay, this person is struggling to maintain pH levels in the tissues. I say tissues a lot rather than blood, because the reality is that our body will keep the pH quite finely tuned at all costs. Usually the acidity comes from the tissues, not from the blood. And obviously prolonged acidity causes a lot of trouble. I mean, I had somebody in the other day whose blood was highly dehydrated. I couldn't see a single separated red blood cell. It was quite extreme. And that person did not feel well. So I have to, you can definitely see extremes to tell how bad somebody is feeling and what you can do about it. I mean, that's my job. My job is to work out why, and to start offering advice, to start changing things, to loosen things up, get things flowing. But if this was a fresh sample, we can see now, because the cells are sort of a little bit more damaged, I can show you things that are a little bit more interesting. I do see this big one here. These are called macrocytes, and they're big red blood cells up here too. And that's a sign, a mild sign, but it is a sign of B12 deficiency, possible B12 deficiency. So they are bigger than usual. They shouldn't be that big, or at least one or two that big is fine. It's not a problem. But if there are quite a few after you've scanned the slide and you're finding that happen a lot, then there's something happening with B12. And that wouldn't surprise me either. I'm not vegan, but I think I don't have enough stomach acid, so I don't think I'm digesting my B12 properly. And I haven't been taking any supplements recently, including my betaine and pepsin, which I use to add to my stomach acid to help. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm about to do some research on myself. I've got some new supplements, so I'm sort of coming off everything, and then I'm going to do my blood and then start them and stick to it for about 3 months and then see what happens. This is really interesting. You see this thing here? It's like a spider moving around in the blood. See that? My cursor is on it and it's following it. It's like an octopus.
What is
More than
that?
an octopus. Well, this is a sort of aggregation of chondrites, the long, thin shapes which are floating around around here. This doesn't surprise me either, because I've had problems with a tooth, so I know that I was expecting this. So yeah, that's a sign that I've got to get in there and I've got to start supporting my immune system and cleansing out those tissues and getting back on the probiotics. That's what I've got, a new product that I'm going to try for probiotics, so see if that works. And I do this sort of research from time to time because I want to see what I can recommend my clients and what really works and what doesn't work. So you can see some target cells here. You see these ones with a sort of smaller ring in the center. Well, that's called a target cell or a codocyte. That's a sign of this. The red blood cell has collapsed because inside it's lost its hemoglobin. It doesn't have enough hemoglobin in it, which means it will be iron deficient. So if there were a lot of those, you'll know someone verging on anemia, possibly losing iron.
Someone just asked that question. They're like, so someone with pernicious anemia, would that show up in the blood? So
yeah, it would definitely. Pernicious anemia is probably one of the easiest things to sort of pinpoint. You would have, not only would you have these big red blood cells that are now drifting past for us so that we can see. It's like a proper little movie, isn't it? We're watching the traffic go by. It's like yeah, so you would have these big ones, and that's a B12 deficiency. But also in the white blood cells that we saw earlier, there's an abnormality where you have too many nuclear lobes. And that's even if you have one cell with, let's say, they're supposed to have around about 4 nuclear lobes, but if one cell has 7, then it's pernicious anemia. So if I get clients and I think that there is something big going on, I try to persuade them to go to the doctor and get a proper blood test. Just to
right, because obviously you can't diagnose with this, but you can see
No.
indications, right? Is that the terminology? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, diagnosis is in the medical profession realm. It's got nothing to do with us. There's no way. And sadly, there have been some therapists that do say, you know, oh, I can see cancer in your blood and things like that. It's just not on. You do not touch diseases and diagnoses with a barge pole. It is not our realm at all. And this is not a diagnostic test. Neither is a complete blood count that you would get from the doctor. They're screening tools. They're there to sort of help you see a bit deeper as to what's going on and then ask more questions. They're not giving all the answers themselves, but the skill is in the person being able to analyze it and put these pieces of the puzzle together and say, this is the question I need to ask next. Because all it is just question upon question, and you just following a trail and trying to find the answer. You don't have all the answers. And it's very important to know that. And you know, us live blood analysts have to be very careful, because if you were to Google live blood analysis, you won't get a very good promotion for us at all, because it's all a quack this and quack that. But this is what doctors were using. I mean, this is what they look at. Oh, here's some interesting stuff. So you see these cells that are connected here together. They're like in a chain.
Oh.
Right, that's called protein linkage. They're broken up now, so it's not true protein linkage. But if it was true protein linkage, they wouldn't ever break up, even under pressure. And that's because of an imbalance of the proteins and the fats in the membrane, mostly the proteins. So they're hooking together and sticking together. And that can be a sign of not digesting proteins enough, not breaking them down enough. Now, alongside some of those macrocytes where you see a B12 deficiency, a possible B12 deficiency, you're thinking, well, this person really needs some stomach acid because they're eating meat. So they're getting B12 from that source anyway, eggs and meat, so that we know that that's in their diet, but they're not, the B12 isn't getting into the cells. It's not getting into the bone marrow, and it's not getting into where these cells are being produced. And that's why they're getting big, because they're sitting in the bone marrow waiting and waiting and waiting for the right level of B12 so that they can reproduce. Because B12 is necessary for DNA production. which is why pernicious anemia is such a dangerous deficiency to have. It takes a long time to get to pernicious anemia. You've used up a lot of your stores of B12, and you can store 7 years of B12 in your liver. However, if you have one night of binge drinking, which isn't very much alcohol really, binge drinking is just a couple of drinks, you can wipe out a year's worth of B12 in your liver. So, you know, we can quite easily be B12 deficient if we drink. And I had champagne last night.
It's all coming out now.
I know, I don't ever drink champagne. It was a celebration for.
So my mum's on Facebook. She just asked a question that my dad had a live blood analysis a few years ago, and they claimed that they could see like a scar on his hand of when that happened. Would that be when we get to the dry blood? Like, is that layers of?
That's dry blood. I mean, and that is a particular philosophy in dry blood. It's not one that I use, but there are people that you know. There's a guy called Bernie Beagleson, who is not alive now, sadly, but his sons are alive and they are still carrying on his work. And I think he had a very particular connection to dry blood and a gift, which was that he could see shapes and patterns in the dry blood. Something that looked like a kidney, it would be a kidney, you know, maybe you've got kidney problems, that sort of thing. It was more like,
it's kind of like iridology, right? A little bit.
Yeah, I would say that goes beyond iridology. Actually, that's another level. For me, it's another
like
level.
you can see patterns, I think is what I mean.
Well,
like
you can see patterns in the dry blood for sure,
right.
But not like this. This is more to do with like a pictorial representation. So an idea that there is, I mean, I don't know if that's what your dad's referring to. I mean, the idea that you can have I understand what you're saying by the iridology, that there's a scar is in there and it heals up, and your eye and the bit in the eye heals up at the same time. So yeah, injury could show up, but I prefer to stick to more scientific biochemical aspects that are.
Well, what I really liked when I first had live blood was it was just like, it kind of, you get to see inside yourself, and it's just like a real-time picture. It's like, oh my goodness, like, look at all my blood, it's clumping, no wonder I feel tired right now. So there's like a direct like relationship or wake-up call, because you're like, oh, I look healthy, I look fine, and then you look at your blood and you're like, oh, my body's kind of working hard. And then you can see that progression when you go, okay, I need to drink more water, and then you re-look at it, you know, a few months later after you've put into place a program, and you get really quick feedback. So
you do, and if you get the chance to see your blood in that time frame of making changes, it's astounding what you can do. It really is, with focus and with a goal and with a plan. And when you stick to it, you know, you repeat, you integrate habits, good healthy habits, and the difference you can make over a course of 3 months, because you don't. I mean, you can make a difference in a week. You can make a difference in, of course, you've always got an opportunity to make a difference to your health. Always. It's never too late. You're producing 2 million red blood cells every second. So you always have an opportunity to influence those cells on many levels. So you're constantly given opportunities to change things. But the key is keeping it up, because, you know, I know there's lots of people have done experiments where they just sort of meditate, they leave their blood and they energize it with intention, or with healing energy, or with crystals, or they do something to the blood and look, it changes. Or, you know, you take the blood, you make them drink a drink, and then you take the blood again and look, it's changed. You can get those immediate changes, but they're not necessarily long lasting, because the blood is continually regenerating itself. So if you really want to continue a positive message to your blood cells, you have to continue the positive action. You can't just do it once and then every weekend get completely, you know, pissed and expect that the blood cells will continue to get better, because they won't. You're going 2 steps forward and then maybe 3 steps back. You just don't know. So you should really continually make changes in order to get good results. But life is we're not robots, and things go up and things go down. But this is really motivating, right? So you see your blood, like me today, I've known that this was coming up, and I was like, oh God, what's my blood going to look like? I can't fake it. It is what it is. And I know how I feel, and I can look at my blood and go, fair enough, you know, that's what I would expect. There's no surprises here, you know, for me.
Shara,
It's,
I've got a question in the chat box, which is
yeah.
but there's two. The first one is, if there are lots of protein linkages, does that mean that the body needs more digestive enzymes?
Not well, yeah. I mean, protease is the enzyme that digests protein. So you could support, it might be necessary that you need to support the body with a bit of digestive support. I would also go for betaine and pepsin, which is the stomach acid as well. I mean, you know, it's unlikely somebody would just have one thing happening in their blood. So everything else is absolutely fine. All they've got is protein linkage. That never happens. So I would be going, well, protein linkage is quite high, but then they've also got this and they've also got that, and they've got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you don't discount that. You add that to the picture, and you're trying to ascertain, well, it's not as simple as if you've got X in your blood, then you take Y. If you've got, you know, A, then you take B. It doesn't work that way, because our body is very complex, and there's this whole cascade of issues that go on. So you've got to look at the diet, you've got to look at the eating habits, you've got to look at the stress, you've got to look at the possible organ toxicity.
Just really a great conversation piece. Like, you start to ask that, and then they might bring out questions like, oh yeah, well, I've been under stress. I've not been sleeping well. Like, it kind of starts to trigger that when you start to see those things. So
yeah, definitely. And that face-to-face contact and being present with that person when they're seeing their blood is really important. I mean, you have to be present because you can't get the blood any other way. But yeah, it's a conversation piece. And like everything, you know, people do forget. And often people just keep going in life thinking they're fine, you know, and that they ignore certain signals. And when they see the blood, they suddenly go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have ignored that. Yeah, actually, this does happen. And I didn't put it down in my questionnaire, but I do feel this and I do feel that. And I ask some random questions sometimes, and they think, well, I never thought that was relevant. But sometimes it is, you know. And some people are really, really emotionally sensitive, and it's their emotional health that's taking a battering rather than physical. But of course, it shows up in the physical too. So everybody's got their different sort of stress points. But it all affects you, and it affects you on a cellular level. So you'll see it, whether it's emotional, mental, or physical. It'll be in the blood.
So then the next question is, if the blood changes meal to meal or different times of the day or season, when you have a live blood taken, is it like a snapshot of your inner world in a similar vein that a HbA1 blood test would be for diabetic over the past 12 weeks?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the sorts of changes that happen seasonally and, you know, throughout the day are not extreme enough to really affect the reading. I would take into account seasons, but I actually take more into account of the person themselves, because some people that feel the cold can feel cold in the summer, you know. So circulation isn't, you know, whereas it's natural to feel a little bit chilly in the winter because there's less heat around, and our body does contract a bit. So I would expect more viscosity. I would expect a little bit more tightness in the blood, I would call tightness. And in the summer, a bit more looseness. But that's not the rule of thumb for everyone. It doesn't always play out that way, because everyone's so varied in their lifestyles and their diet and everything else. So yes, it's a snapshot, but also remember that these cells, red blood cells, live for 120 days. So some of the cells that we're seeing in this sample are new. Some of them are medium. Some of them are really old, on their way out. So you're looking at a sort of 6-month snapshot of that blood cell being in your body. You know, you've got some of them are 3 months ago, some of them have just been born. So you've got a bit of a time span there to work with. And that's why I generally don't suggest another blood test for another 3 months. so that at least most of the cells have regenerated, and then you can really see a bit more of an impact of what you've been doing. But the problem with that is, of course, that means somebody has to keep up changes for 3 months.
So is it true that so if somebody who's healthy, their blood will stay won't degrade as fast as somebody who's unhealthy when you get on the slide, right? So somebody's really
absolutely.
healthy,
Yeah, because there's things that we can't see under the microscope, which are the qualities in the plasma. And the qualities in the plasma, you'll have tiny chemicals, you'll have all sorts of things, you have toxins, all sorts of stuff in that plasma. We'll see signs. I might see crystals in the plasma, which are amalgamations of different products in the blood that have come together and created forms and those are byproducts. So they shouldn't be there. That's telling me something about the quality of the plasma. There may be fibrin, strings of fibrin, which are protein. It's a protein molecule that's part of the clotting cascade. Shouldn't be there in normal blood, but sometimes it's there because of inflammation and liver stress, because it's the liver that produces some of these enzymes. And sometimes if the liver's under stress, it produces more pro-clotting factors than unclotting factors. So you end up with more of these things. So there's different things in the plasma that can indicate, health and issues that are happening inside, but sometimes you can't see these things and they are just in that plasma, and they will start affecting the red blood cells on the slide quicker when it's more acidic. And the red blood cells themselves, if their membranes are not very robust, so they're not being made with the right levels of essential fatty acids, cholesterol, proteins, if they're not built properly, then they will degrade quicker too. So somebody who doesn't have good, healthy, robust membranes, whose health isn't particularly very good for whatever reason, their red blood cells won't live the full 120 days. So with people that are quite sick, I get them to come back sooner, because you can see changes quicker in people that are sicker, because their cells don't live as long. So yeah, there's lots of different ways of looking at the blood and seeing the indications and understanding what they mean. And over time, you obviously, once your eyes are in on seeing blood and seeing a lot of cells, you get a lot, you understand the patterns, and you learn quicker what to ignore and what to pay attention to and what's more important. But so what's interesting is when the dry blood is so good as a companion to the live blood, because you get to see another side. You have to leave the blood to dry. It takes about 20 minutes to dry. It's not quite dry. So I'm sort of fanning it here at the side to try and get it ready so we can put it up on the slide. So did I answer all the questions?
No, I've got another one coming now. If somebody has hypertension, how would this present in the blood?
So there's different causes for hypertension. Most frequently in people that say that they have hypertension, I most frequently see fibrin in the blood. So you didn't see that with my blood. So I haven't got an example to show you. I could flick through some pictures, but it might take some time. So fibrin are these fine strings. They look like scratches, and they cause congestion. So that's part of the clotting cascade, and that it comes out when when there's been damage in the circulatory system. So you find that with hypertension, you find that people with heart problems and circulatory issues, you'll find fibrin there in the blood. So that's the most common thing that I see. Yeah,
I guess dehydration plays a part as well, does it, with hypertension?
Yeah, absolutely. Dehydration, kidney health, mineral balance, pH. You want it could be a pH problem, could be at the cause of it. So you're trying to find the root cause of somebody having this having their body push the volume of blood, you know, the vasoconstriction, the constriction of the vessels that are carrying the blood, they're squeezing. Why would they squeeze? Well, there's all kinds of reasons. So the squeezing is a contraction. It could be that they're lacking in electrolytes and minerals, and there is a hardening going on. So there's too much calcium in these muscles generally, and so there's too much contraction. That could be part of the picture. So a hardening and contracting due to calcium being in the wrong place, you know, calcium moving around the body. We're very rarely low in calcium. It just gets put into the wrong position in our body, and so we end up with hardening.
So it's more of a utilization issue, isn't it, rather than a deficiency?
Yes, and it can be through acidic problems. So it can be through lack of, could be digestive, right? So the cause could be digestive. Their pH in the digestive tract is not very well balanced. So they are not absorbing minerals in the same way, you know, in the way that they should. They're not absorbing enough. It could be that it's not in the diet. It could be that their digestive capacity is just not strong enough. They don't have a strong enough pH, acidic pH in the stomach, and they don't have a strong enough alkaline pH in the bile and in the pancreatic enzymes and everything. So that alters everything all the way down. I mean, hypertension doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's something that, like all these chronic diseases that take a long time to fix, they happen before you get diagnosed. The diagnosis is just when you've been sick enough to go to a doctor to do something about it, or it's a side effect of a medication. But yeah, hydration is huge, because obviously if you have enough volume of fluid in your blood, then you won't need the pressure. Your kidneys and all the brain and everything that's trying to keep that pressure up, they're always monitoring the pressure in the blood. If you had enough volume of blood, you wouldn't need to cause that pressure, because the pressure's there so that it can pump properly around your heart. So it could be a heart problem. The cause could be a heart problem. It could be that there is damage in the vessels somewhere that hasn't been picked up, and it's just causing a thickening of the blood through fibrin, which causes a higher viscosity, which means it's harder to pump, which means you have to then constrict the vessels more in order to let that happen. So it's really important to find out why, you know, and why is not going to come that easily, because it may be different for a different pathway for everyone. So it's a bit of a detective case with all things, really. Any diagnosis like that, you have to sort of work out why, because we're not robots, right? And we're all different and unique. So the pathway that we have trodden that has brought us to a place of ill health on this map of health, no one else has followed us on that path. It's a unique path, and we've got to find our way back. So there isn't really any well-trodden path that we should take, although there are a few things. There's obviously we have science that helps us work stuff out. We have research projects that help us understand, you know, how things can change. But mostly you find that's pharmaceutically based, rather than giving you a chance to sort of look at your own habits and diet and lifestyle and the way that you live your life and see, well, could I be affecting it in some way, and can I make a difference?
So with doing this microscopy, can you tell the health of someone's lymphatic system?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's not, again, sort of thorough. There's all sorts of different issues. I mean, the lymph, you have storage places for T cells. So you have where you store your lymphocytes. So the T cells and B cells, they stay there to get mature. So you could see indications in the lymphocytes to help you to decide what's going on with the lymph. You've also got the person themselves. If they've got a lymphatic problem, you'll know it. You'll have different symptoms, you know, based on edema, based on recurring infections, based on swelling, inflammation around the lymph, things like that. Sometimes you might not have any. Well, yeah, everybody has a slightly different constitution as well. So although some things some people get affected by certain things and some people don't. They have a different constitution. They are more robust in some areas and not robust in others. So some of us can take more abuse, and some people are highly sensitive. That is just the way it is. But the thing about the blood is I can see the individual in the blood, especially when it comes to the dry blood, because that's where you see a person's constitution. You can tell whether they have a strong and robust constitution or whether they have a sensitive, a weaker constitution. So I'm hoping that this dry blood, it's just not dry. I don't know why. I think it's because it's cold.
So if you've got a few more minutes there before you put that slide on, if you can see the cells are dying off quicker than normal, can you help people slow the aging process?
Yes.
Great answer.
Yes, you can. Like I mean, it's all about slowing the aging process. That is what it's all about. This is what health is all about. You're trying to maximize the environment that your cells live in so that they are fed properly, nourished properly, cleansed properly, in which case they won't need to replicate as often, and they won't die as often. You can keep a cell alive in a petri dish for years if you provide them with the right environment. Our body has the equipment to cleanse the environment that the cells are in, to nourish the environment that the cells are in. And, that's what our body does. It's monitoring all the time to keep the internal environment as good as possible. It also has a mission, has a hierarchy. The body will always protect the brain and the heart. There's a hierarchy of organs. So some other organs will get less circulation, will get less nutrients, are less important. And the body has an ability of sensing, okay, we don't have enough of this, protect the brain, protect this, and that's why sometimes we get niggling symptoms in lower, the organs that are lower down in the hierarchy. And we get signs in our body in different ways, through the skin, through our energy levels, and our digestion. They're the places we get most signs. And if we listen to those signs, we can learn, because the one thing the body can't do is it can't feed itself. So it will know how to break stuff down to be able to mine for nutrients inside itself if necessary. So if it doesn't have enough calcium, sodium, magnesium, potassium, if it doesn't have enough minerals, it'll start breaking stuff down and getting it from somewhere to feed the brain and to feed the heart and to feed the most hierarchical organs. But it can't make you go out and eat. So this is where the psychology comes in, and this is where we have to use our brains and educate ourselves, because our body relies on motivating us to be hungry, to be thirsty at the right times, and also relies on us to reach for the foods. It can't tell that a food has tons of toxins and additives and stuff like that in it. It will just go hungry, and you go and eat the food. But so it relies on us to guide ourselves to the right things, the right habits. And if we don't, it will find what it needs elsewhere, and it will have to find it from your own body. So you will end up damaging yourself. So yeah, you got to learn what it is your body needs. You got to learn how to read the signs that your body's giving you. I try to eat as nature intended as much as possible, live as nature intended as much as possible, understand that good health is not a right. It's not something, we're not all born perfect and healthy, and then we all have our disposition, and then we all have our challenges throughout our life, and we've got to try to maintain that internal environment through thick and thin, and we're all different. So you do have to understand what you need, and know that you know best. Ultimately, even if you don't have as much knowledge about nutrition as someone like me, it doesn't mean that I always know better than you. There's different qualities in food. I have people come to me that say, don't take away my coffee. You know, I wouldn't dream of taking away their coffee. Even though it may be causing them some stress, taking it away is going to cause them even more, right? There's a different way, there's different approaches that you have to have. There has to be pleasure, there has to be enjoyment, as well as health. But yeah, so you are basically trying to stop the aging process by looking after yourself and being healthy. That's what you're trying to do. So in terms of aging, the biggest factor that happens in aging is oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is caused by the breakdown of the body's cells. And chronic disease, really heavy chronic disease, has a heavy amount of oxidative stress. And yeah, so that's the biggest factor. So free radical damage, anything that's causing the oxidation of cell membranes, that's one of the biggest, the most damaging things. And that's why acidity is so important and pH is so important, because those things cause free radical damage. I rambled a bit there, didn't I?
So if somebody has like cold flu-like symptoms, are you going to see that like in the blood?
Yeah, I mean, like you saw in my blood, you could see that there was a lot of white blood cells there. I've smashed them all up now, so they're all broken up, but there were a lot of white blood cells when I first looked at my blood. There were in nearly every portion of the slide. That's a lot. And I said
you would see more white blood cells if somebody's got acute cold flu type symptoms, right?
Yep, absolutely. And maybe even before they feel any symptoms. I see people, sometimes I see tons, I go, are you feeling okay? Are you feeling fatigued? Have you got a cold coming? Do you feel like you've got a cold coming? They're like, no. And I say, well, you need to go away and take lots of vitamin C, because the blood is not lying. I'm not making it up. There are loads of neutrophils here, and they are there because they're fighting something. They're not there just for fun. They're there because there's something in your system. So protect yourself. And I usually tell them to go and take loads of vitamin C. But I also can see abnormalities in white blood cells. The sort of the most serious ones would be the lymphocytes, and looking at those and seeing those, if they look really abnormal, then that really needs a bit more investigation, because they're the ones that are involved in fighting chronic disease. So yeah, and having a lot of them would be a problem, or having too few. Having not enough is also a problem too. Right, I'm going to take this off now.
That was fun. Thank you.
That's all right. I'm going to put do you want me to do the dry blood?
Yes.
You got time?
Yeah.
I'm not boring you?
No,
it's
definitely not boring us.
You would be bored if you were my husband.
Yeah, probably. Actually, that just came out wrong. Forget that.
Right, so let's turn the light right down, because that's going to be brighter. This dry blood test used to be a medical test. So this used to be used by doctors, and it was devised to be able to do a bedside blood test for those patients that were really too sick to move, or they had, they were bedbound, because they wanted to see just how sick were they. And there was a really quick way of doing that with this dry blood. They would do the similar thing to what I did. They would tap it only 3 times, and it was called the Boland test. And they knew that in chronic disease, when there's a high level of oxidative stress, what happens to the blood in this test, where you just tap the coagulated blood, it dries, leaving a pattern, a particular pattern, which indicates really high levels of oxidative stress. And they knew that depending on that pattern, that person would have to get to hospital quick, or can this person stay in bed for a few more days? Is it going to be okay? So it was a real sort of black and white test in a way. They believed it could be used to detect cancer. And they did quite a lot of research on this. And they did discover that it was about 80% effective. But it's no more nuanced than, in truth, all it is doing is showing levels of oxidative stress, which can be caused by different types of chronic disease when it's, you know, pretty bad, not just cancer. So you see, it's quite different to the live blood. And what you're looking at here is these black lines. This is fibrin. And although in the live blood, I was saying fibrin is not a good thing because it's it blocks the flow of blood. It's a clotting factor. Obviously, in this blood, we want it to clot. And it's a thin film of clotted blood. And we want to see the clotting cascade. So we want to see the fibrin. And this is actually, I'm quite pleased with this. This is not so bad because nearly the whole of this layer has this black fibrin, crazy paving black lines going through it. And this bit hasn't quite dried yet, but you might actually, there's no fibrin formed yet, but because of the light, the heat of the light, we might start seeing it form as it dries, which is quite groovy. So this is you know, when I took 8 drops, I took 8 layers. The first one has got the most blood in it, so it takes longer to dry. So the other layers are all dry. We'll come back to this one, and once it's dry, we'll see the fibrin has appeared because it oxidizes with the air, and then you see it. This layer is slightly thinner, so it's still a bit wet in the middle, but you can see the fibrins there. So the oxidative stress shows up in this blood, dry blood, as these white puddles. You see this in a sort of arc. They are puddles of sialic acid, which is a byproduct of free radical damage. It's basically stripped the sialic acid off the cells, chemically changed it. So the cells are dead, and these are the products that are left over from oxidative stress. And this is typically called the lymphatic ring. This is where it's similar to iridology, that it has these rings and it's a round shape, you know, so it has this similarity. The edges are where you would see heavy metals and heavy metal toxicity. And this is due to the fact that heavy metal particles in the blood are heavy. And as this drop of blood dries, within the little drop of blood on the slide are all these convection currents, and they pick up the particles, the heavy particles, and fling them to the outer rims. And as that dries, you get these layers and patterns going into the center. So when we see heavy metal, we would see it almost like someone had drawn a line around the outside, so it's dark and where the particles land. So it's looking quite good, my blood, sorry. Let me see if I was hoping for maybe parasites or something, but nope.
Well, good. Let's not hope for parasites.
It's always a little bit disappointing though when you're showing the blood to people, and I kind of want to show them things. I'm like, gonna have to make something out of something here. Yeah, I mean, what's interesting with the dry blood is in the live blood, you can see all this stuff. You can't see parasites in the live blood necessarily, okay? If somebody had parasites is a big question for people in my profession. And parasites is something people come to us to try to detect. You get a lot of people, I have a lot of inquiries from people that have Lyme disease, and they want to see if you can see Lyme in the blood and things like that. Now, although Lyme is a blood parasite, it only lives in the blood for a very short time. After that, it migrates to the tissues. That's why it's so difficult, because it hides and it has many different forms. So it can, and it won't stay in the blood for long because the blood's pH isn't very hospitable to its life cycle. Can't live its life cycle in the blood. So it has to migrate. So unless you catch someone's blood when they've just been bitten, you're not going to see a live Lyme infection in the blood. What you may see is a certain type of white blood cell that comes out when there are Lyme infections or parasite infections, and that's an eosinophil. Didn't see any eosinophils in my live blood. They're really rare. They're one of the rarest of the white blood cells in a blood sample. So elevated eosinophils, if you see more than 2, then you're thinking, okay, there could be some sort of parasite infection, because that's their job. They come out to kill parasites. The reason we can see evidence of parasites in the dry blood is because the eosinophils, when they come out and they release their toxic products and they react with parasites, it produces a chemical that gets put into the blood and affects the clotting process. And so when you see parasites in the dry blood, you will see a break in this. You'll see it's almost like someone has gone with a black marker and colored in the fibrin a bit and made it thicker. And there's this bulge in there, and it's very obvious when you know what you're looking for. I haven't really got any here. I might have mild. There may be another layer where there is some. That's almost like it there. You can see the sort of thickened fibrin in that bit there. So that's how we can see parasites in the blood. We cannot identify what type of parasite. And sometimes, you know, people talk about liver flukes and things like that, but there is not really a biochemical pathway that would help you denote what type of parasite it is. That's beyond the realm, really, of dry blood analysis, but you can see evidence of them. And it's important because obviously, depending on the level of parasites, indication that we can see, if it's quite a high indication, then you know that that parasite's really affecting that person's health. I find it quite common in people with autism diagnosis. That's just what I find. That's a pattern that I see. I don't think there's a causation going on, but I do find it very common. And that's just something you learn after seeing blood quite a lot. You start to see patterns.
So can you just repeat that pattern for autism?
Well, I have a pattern that I have seen repeat itself a lot is in clients with autism. I see quite a strong parasite indication in the dry blood.
Oh, wow.
And it's common for them to have quite multiple digestive issues. But if these parasites are floating around in the blood, then they're circulating around the system, right? I mean, if there is evidence of parasites in the blood, then it's quite a high indication, then we know that this is really affecting them. Because the thing about parasites is it's really hard. You don't want to go in and attack them too much, because if there's a high level of indication of parasites, then they're having quite a deep impact on that person. And if you go in and they're probably depleted, there will be other indications in the live blood that will show that this person isn't, there's deficiencies, possibly B12, different issues, different deficiencies, mineral deficiencies and things like that. They'll have different symptoms, but they hide quite well, parasites, but they eat you, really, don't they? They take your food, so you're going to be depleted. And when you go in with anti-parasitic medication of any sort, whether it's herbal or whatever it is, that can deplete you even further. So sometimes to fight a parasite, you have to be quite brutal, but you do have to be quite strong. And sometimes you have to tread that line quite carefully. You can't, like if somebody with autism has high levels of parasites, you can't go in with killing the parasite that's going to really affect their brain, and disturb them and cause them more stress. And you just can't do it. So you have to be quite sensitive. There's not much to show you. It's really annoying. I've got little patches of oxidative stress going on here. Next time I should do a slideshow of all the worst blood that I've ever seen. My top 10 worst blood ever. So if somebody has, these little holes, these little puddles here of oxidative stress, they are in the center, they're more centralized, and we have a sort of, like, similar to iridology, there's an overlay that we can put onto this round dot of blood, and the central parts represent more internal organs, the brain, and even the liver and the colon, right through the center, the core of the body. And the outer edges represent the more peripheral areas. So this could be oxidative stress in just around the organs, in the connective tissue, because of where it's situated. That's my interpretation anyway. One of the other layers that we put into dry blood analysis is that the first 4 drops are more acute, they're more current, what's happening now, and the later 4 drops tend to be past, and they are more chronic. So, and the other thing is that in order for anything to be quite a strong indication, it needs to appear in more than one layer. It means nothing to have it just in one layer. It has to be in several. Otherwise, it's not very strong. So these are just the sorts of rules that we go by. So that's interesting. So there's a bit more darkness on the edges here of this drop. There's a few more patches, which could be toxins, could be heavy metals. And you can see a repeat of these oxidative stress areas here, where we've got some puddles. Again, see, that's much more central. That could be more organ based. There could be some inflammation in some organs. And sometimes if there are 2 areas, that would be paired organs, so kidneys, lungs, ovaries, possibly ovaries, yeah. So that could be, if it's repeated in several layers, sort of in around about the same area, then that's a stronger indication.
So I've got a question here again. Are you able to see side effects of vaccinations in the live blood?
If someone has just had a vaccine or recently been vaccinated, then you may see signs of their immune system reacting to it, yeah. And of course, depending on what's in that vaccine, you may see in the dry blood as well, you may see toxins and heavy metals, depending on what's in it. You could see people react differently to vaccines, so it very much depends on the constitution of the person. So, you know, a person with strong constitution won't get a reaction, and a person with a weaker constitution may well get a reaction. And there's all those bits in between. It might be a good idea to have some kind of analysis like this before going for a vaccine, so that you can assess your own constitution and see what you're capable of, you know, what's going on, get an interpretation of what's going on. Is your liver strong? How's your digestion? How's your digestive tract? Do you already have some kind of dysbiosis, you know, an imbalance in your microbiome, which would show up in various ways. One way might be, with this dry blood, you can see these holes in the center here. This is the first time we've seen this in my dry blood, but this so far, this is the bowel, and this is oxidative stress in the bowel. So the thing about the dry blood is you can take dry blood more often. You don't have to wait 3 months like the live blood. It's you know, you can improve it quicker, and you can see things moving quicker as well. But there you go. I don't have it in this layer. There's no bowel indication here, but it's darker in the center. And typically a dark center is bowel toxicity. So, and in this, you can also see some tiny little holes, tiny little white dots. Yeah. This is, I've got up in magnification to the next level, so you can see the breaking up, the little white dots that we could see are here and here. This is tiny specks of oxidative stress, and that's quite typical of adrenal stress or food allergies, so reacting to foods. And people that have quite a lot of allergies or reactions, they will have this sort of peppering of white dots throughout the dry blood in the center. But they will also, in their live blood, they will have another type of white blood cell called a basophil, which comes out in as an allergic reaction. It's full of histamine. So when your body senses something that it wants to attack it, and it's an allergy type thing, then you'll get a lot of basophils coming out. So you put those two things together, you can correlate, you can cross correlate to have a strong indication of, I think you're reacting to something, because I can see this in your blood. You can't identify which food it would be, but you can see that there's a reaction going on. And then the last drop, there's quite a lot of little holes there. So that's interesting. That is a possible adrenal stress, or that looks to me more like a sort of allergic response. Although I didn't see any basophils in my blood, but I didn't go looking that long for it, to be honest. I should have done, but I didn't. So to me, my interpretation of that whole sort of sample of blood, let's go back to the first drop, because that might have dried by now. See how much fibrin is there now, and it wasn't there before. And I said once the blood has dried, you'll see it will appear. So that's quite a lot. Okay, so this person has quite a strong constitution, because the fibrin in the dry blood, these black lines, is quite firm and it's quite solid. It's in the first 2 layers, almost across the whole layer. So that's good. That means this person has quite a good, strong nutritional pool. There's enough proteins, and it's strong. As far as oxidative stress, very little oxidative stress throughout. So there's no degeneration going on. There doesn't seem to be chronic oxidative stress happening. There are no parasite indications. There isn't really very much toxicity, other than in the later layers, there's a little bit of bowel inflammation on this layer, coupled with the dark center there, which is bowel toxicity, coupled with the little pinprick holes, which could be an intolerance. So something digestive is definitely going on. And we know that in the live blood, there were these large red blood cells, B12 deficiency, quite indicative of a digestive issue, a digestive weakness. So this person doesn't need more protein, but needs to digest it better. So I would be saying you need to get some digestive enzymes and some betaine and pepsin, and take that with every protein meal. Make sure you hydrate in between as well, because there was a bit of dehydration in the live blood where the cells were crossing over. There's definitely some kind of immune response happening, because there were a lot of neutrophils, and so up the vitamin C levels and all the immune nutrients, the zinc, the selenium, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and lots of trace minerals. As for the bowels, with the bowel toxicity and this allergic response going on, and I think that's down to good bacteria in the gut. I think there's some inflammation, and I think the immune system, because the immune system and the gut bacteria are so well connected that you have to support both. If you see one issue in one, you support the other. They go hand in hand. So make sure lots of vegetables and lots of vegetable fiber to help feed the good bacteria. Take a good bacteria, take a good probiotic. I would also think that there's a rising fungal situation. We saw candida happening. We saw some fungal fermentation happening in the live blood. When we stressed it, we could see quite a lot of those chondrites and that little wormy thing wriggling around. That's a rising level of fungal activity. So there could be something happening in the teeth. There could be just candida rising up. So we want to get the good bacteria in. I would also go for a sort of anti-candida supplement, which includes caprylic acid. I would also go for Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a particular probiotic that keeps candida in its place. And yeah, and maybe is this person eating something that they react to and they shouldn't eat it? And I would say yes, because I have been eating a bit more gluten and dairy, so I know that for sure. I would say, well, ease off on that, because you want to give your immune system a break from reacting to those sorts of things, and just try and concentrate on getting the good bacteria in, support the immune system, hydrate, and support digestive system. That would be my kind of roundup. And maybe a B12 supplement as well, because you want to keep the levels topped up, and stop drinking champagne. That would be the other.
I've been waiting to say that to you, but you know, it's
got there first.
Yeah. The other thing is with building enzymes and things like that, and pineapples are very good, and also papayas with papaya seeds, because it's got papain, which is a proteolytic enzyme.
Yeah.
Which again is bromelain, and
bromelain as well is good. Yeah.
So
pepsin is from animal product, right? So
is it?
Yeah, I think pepsin's an animal based.
Yeah.
Like for the stronger enzymes, I've used serrapeptase in the past as a strong protein.
Isn't that from worms?
Well, it was originally synthesized from worms, but it's now created in a lab. So yeah, what the original was, but now you can get it as a vegetarian form, and that's very powerful. But yeah, like papaya, pineapple have really good enzymes, and they do extract those. They can be really useful. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can do it with diet as well. I mean, I try to live seasonally, which isn't that easy in this hemisphere, where you want to have your alkaline lemon juice in the morning,
well,
and your avocado in the afternoon, and your coconut oil. It's a bit tricky.
Oh, do you know, I was shown a movie about avocados. I haven't eaten an avocado since.
I know.
It's called the Avocado Wars. It's horrendous.
Is it?
Yeah.
We should know. We need to be aware of all of these things, because.
Yeah, but let's put it this way. Kay's son he said, "Phil, you're never going to eat avocado again." And I was like, "Yeah." So he sat me down and made me watch this little documentary. Well, it wasn't little; it was about an hour long. This documentary on the avocado wars, and the people that are getting killed, and the lands getting trashed. It's unbelievable over avocados.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
It makes sense. How can the world be supplied with avocados like this? How can it?
Well,
it's not natural.
I mean, trillions of tons. It's trillions. Trillions.
Same for coconuts as well.
So the thing with avocados is the main thing is it's called the Avocado Wars. So it's actually run by mafia now. It would be. Yeah, well, I never gave it a thought. And
no, I know.
I haven't eaten avocado since I watched that program, which is great.
It's like chocolate as well, I guess, and coffee. They're all.
Well, I think everything has a supply chain that you buy in a store. Unless you're growing it in your garden, there's going to be some sort of destruction that happens from that.
I guess it depends though on the supplier and whether they know the chain. The people that I buy superfoods from, they've met most of their producers personally, so they know the process in it. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in about avocados just to upset everyone's evening.
I will not watch it and continue to eat avocados.
I'm lucky
I'm going to bury my head in the sand. I know a lot of things, but that one I'm burying my head in the sand. Thank you very much.
That was timely for me, because I was wanting to get away from avocado. So for me, it was very timely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying. I don't have enough time to research it properly, but we are, in our household, we are growing as much as we can for ourselves. So every year we get a bit better, and we get a little bit more aware of what we can grow. My dad's amazing, actually. He has a forest garden in Wales.
Oh wow!
And he doesn't grow just native stuff, because he's sort of, he thinks, well, the climate's changing, and even within the space that I have a microclimate in different areas, and I can grow different things. So I'm going to see what I can grow. So he grows everything, and then he can grow things that he can eat. So everything's edible, and Yeah, it's amazing. I learn a lot from him. Just he goes, well, the bark of this and the berry of this and the this of this, you know, I'm quickly writing it all down, going, God, Dad, you
Wow,
know,
that's amazing.
I need to keep hold of all this information. And can you do me a cutting? I want to put that in my garden.
Yeah.
And we ourselves are just constantly trying to understand more about what we can grow here and what can we use instead, you know. And why is it that should we really in this northern hemisphere be eating tropical things? You know, is
Well,
there a dissonance with those with the light that we have here, the sunlight that we have here, and the sunlight that those vegetables and those plants have where they're from? That there's not a match, and nature has a plan. You know, there's a plan for that. And does that cause us stress in some way? Are we confusing our body with these different signals? I don't know the answers to these things. This is just the things that I kind of think about.
well, someone explained it to me really well once, and I kind of now I kind of buy it a little bit, which is if you get a Bengali tiger and take it from Bengal and stick it into an English zoo and make it live on an English diet, it dies. So just because we're now living in the northern hemisphere doesn't necessarily mean we've always lived in the northern hemisphere. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're biologically adapted to eat food from the northern hemisphere. So I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, that's true. And there are different ways of yeah. I mean, I don't know how many generations we can go back. I don't think we can go back hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. Well, to make that fit us.
Well, if you go back, right, to 12,000 years, when I was doing my arboricultural training, 12,000 years ago, we were in the arboreal age, which meant Britain grew magnolia trees very well. I mean, it does now, but they struggle. So that shows that we were in a Mediterranean climate just 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, well, the land shifted, didn't it? So it's moved up to, you know, things of the tectonic plates and everything else shifts. So yeah, but then generations and generations and generations have changed. But I do wonder about what, yeah, like I know that, say, flaxseed, linseed, you know, if you take linseed from Europe or grow it in this country, and you take linseed from America, they have a very different profile, you know, in the oils that they have and the other things that they have and they contain, because they're reacting to where they live and the sun and what they need, and that what it contains matches the people that live there. Not necessarily the people that have always lived there and have never deviated from that area, but the people that are living in the same environment and the same sunshine and reacting to the same way, that there's this match, which adds another layer, doesn't it, to the idea of nourishment and unlocks something. And I do wonder if we, in this part of the world, when it comes to eating a tropical oil, like coconut oil, which is rock solid at room temperature right now, what does that do in our body? How much stress does it cause us to have to digest that lipid? You know, because our body temperature stays the same, but it has to work harder to stay the same. And if we're ingesting a fat that is not liquid, but we have to make it liquid, and we have to make it bond it with water, and we have to make it, you know, go through so many different processes and through the lymph, which may be thick anyway, because in the winter our lymph thickens. So is that appropriate? Do you know what I mean?
I'd like to add to that with linseed. Linseed, you've got to extract the oil out of the linseed, and that's a hell of a process on the body.
Yeah,
you know, same as walnuts and hazelnuts
and coconuts.
There's no liquid fat in
oil, on olive oil. Yeah.
So you actually extract, you know, you've got to extract them. So just great questions, aren't they? Just really to think about the extraction process of, you know, as you were talking about coconut oil, I was thinking, imagine the extraction process of getting oil out of a walnut inside the body.
Well, even eating maize in Africa, you know, they have to process it in so many ways to get enzyme actions and to neutralize the toxins in it and everything to make it edible. It's amazing what we have learnt as humans to make something edible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there was a question earlier, which I've saved it for the end, which is, are you taking clients at this moment in time?
I am. I am
I
lucky
said that
enough in my
earlier.
office that it's my clinic to myself, and has its own entrance and everything. So it's quite, safe, and I have enough space to distance myself. Obviously, when I'm taking the blood, I'm up close, wear a mask, a visor, and everything. And keeping the consultation short, so that we do enough in that time that we're together, but we're not in the same room together for a long time.
So something I'd like to add to the process of getting an appointment with you is your questionnaire is really thorough. So don't do what I did, which was, oh, have you got an appointment? Yes, I've got one. When do you want it? Can we have it Saturday? Yes, you can. And I've got 2 days to fill out this form, and it's just the form's an incredible journey. And I didn't realize how important and how deep Shirah went with the consultation. So the form, give yourself, don't just jump, don't go, oh yeah, I'm really excited, and you can get an appointment, bam, except you won't get the full benefit because you haven't had that whole journey. That's really important for her to be able to look at the ancestry of what's going on for you. And that for me was fascinating. So that's what I would like to add, is allow the time to fill in the form, because it's a long form.
But the thing is, right, if you're going to go and find out more about yourself and what you want to know, what you want to do, you want your money's worth, right? So
yeah.
So filling out this form, tedious as it may be, it takes you on a journey, because you have to remember where you've been and and you have to tune into yourself. Because I ask, like, top to toe, inside out, every bit of your body, I ask, how is it? And people still forget to fill stuff out, or, I've had people forget to tell me that they've had a gallbladder removed, that's quite important. But it's amazing how we forget, and we just carry on, and we're so disconnected to what's happening to our body and what our body is trying to tell us. We just kind of push through, because life's like that. I mean, we all do it. And then also, the more information I have, the easier it is for me to get to the nub of what's going on. And it's like a detective. I'm a detective, so I'm looking for these clues, and sometimes the littlest thing means the most. So yeah, it's an important part of the process. It's a naturopathic style questionnaire. You're not getting your 10 minutes with a doctor here. You're getting.
It's brilliant, and it's well worth making the effort to fill it out.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, what's the word? The old English expression is, I can't, whatever. She's great. It's really worth an appointment.
It's late. It's Sunday.
It's really worth an appointment. It's really interesting. If you've never had it before, it's really worth doing, because Phil knows. Phil's had his blood done numerous times. He's trained a little bit in live blood. I've had my blood done, I don't know, probably 20 times, I should think, over the years. And
wow,
every time, sorry,
that's good. That's somebody who knows the value of the blood analysis to have it done.
Well, the first time I had it done was at the Tree of Life with Phil, and Gabriel Cousins did it, and it just blew me away. I felt completely exposed and naked, and it was like, oh my God. But the excitement of being able to see the minuscule detail, there's no guessing. You're not guessing.
No. I mean, some people there are those that are better than others. I mean, I have to say that there is such a wide variety of different trainings that you can do with live and dry blood analysis. And I've done my original training, but I've also seen the manuals of several other trainings as well. So I wrote our own live Nature Cure Academy's live and dry blood analysis course, because I was so kind of like confused with all these different manuals saying this, and then another one would say that, and I'd be like, what's the truth? How can one say this and one say that? What do they mean? And some of them were even getting the cell names wrong. They were calling them the wrong things, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go to the medical books here. So I'd go and get the hematology books and check it all out and cross-reference everything and get rid of crap and stick to what I knew. And then I would go and try and find the biochemical reason for all of these things. Where does it come from? Why is it there? What does it stem from? What can affect it? Why would it be there? To get the whole picture, because you don't get that in the trainings. Usually you don't get that. You just get told, here's your dictionary of A to Z of blood, and that's this, and that means this, and that's this, and that means that. And you're not given the behind the scenes, you know, how did it get there? Why did it get produced? You know, what could be affecting that? You know, what questions should we be asking here? And so that's why I wrote the course in the end. I spent a couple of years researching and cross-referencing and spending a fortune on books and publications and getting access to articles and all sorts. And I was amazed, because I had no idea that dry blood analysis, for instance, is really revived in the medical society, in the scientific world, and that they are using it to detect, to diagnose. You know, they're trying to use it for diagnosis, which is not what we're doing, because we can't, because we're not medically trained. But they're doing all the research now to take these dry blood patterns and correlate them with truth. So they would take the sample that the blood came from, they'd do the dry blood, they'd take the sample, and then they'd go and analyze the sample with a laboratory machine and analyze all the biomarkers and connect it. And so now they're getting some real nuanced stuff, you know, and being able to say, and this is in Russia and Japan. So that's where this is stemming from. I mean, I don't think Russia's going to, I think they're way ahead, and I don't think they're going to release. The stuff that I was reading was 2016, 2018.
I think they're way ahead of the game, Russians.
They're way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game.
That it's, you know, I was talking to someone about this today, actually. They're regarded as being backward. You know, they're so kind of suppressed. But actually, if you take the mainstream stuff as always and turn it around 180 degrees, you're probably somewhere near the truth, which is probably Russia are way ahead of where we think they are.
We're really scared of Russia because they keep their cards close to their chest, and you know, they nourish and grow intelligence. They don't destroy it. I know on one side they're kind of trying to keep a population controlled with various, you know, fear-based stuff. But on the other side, they really do. They value excellence and they value intelligence. And their technicians, their electricians, their electronics, everything is just way ahead. I mean, they had the Kirlian photography, you know, way back, which is picking up the electromagnetic fields of humans. They were using that sort of stuff. Probably because they were doing some mad experiments with humans and they were trying to detect stuff. I don't know what they're getting up to, but they are ahead of the game.
So also back in the 80s, when I was, I'll start again. When I was I'm going to forget back in the 80s. When I was researching Taoist longevity herbs, it took me on my little quest to the Russian research done, I'm going to get to this point, back in the 80s, where if you remember, those of us that are old enough to remember, the Russian athletes were kind of winning at track and field, all the kind of really tough, muscular, physical sports. The Russians were winning everything. And it turns out that they were trialing the longevity adaptogenic herbs on the athletes.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's what they were using to get their athletes to win everything, was the Taoist longevity herbs. Wow, so if you want to get the real valued research, the scientific research that's done on the longevity herbs, you've got to look at Russia. Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know, there's another doctor called Dr. What is his name now? I've been to see him a few times. I can't think what his name is offhand. But he uses, it's just really funny. It's all just disappearing now. So anyway,
you need to hydrate. I've not seen you drink any water.
I did go downstairs and drink some water actually. But yeah, you're right. I do. I can feel it. So he was using a supplement, carnosine. He was using a carnosine supplement that was treated with vibrational medicine. So it's carnosine and vibrational medicine. And that research to create that was done in Russia to rehabilitate the Russian astronauts when they came back from space.
Ooh, that's nice of them to care so much about their...
Kuchera.
I'm not sure America did the same.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because, you know, in England, on the whole, in the alternative community, we look to America to actually to get like the cutting edge technology, but actually they're so far behind the Russians. So, but Russians aren't letting it out, are they?
No, well, I mean, it's the same in China as well, isn't it? Well, I mean, why not? I mean, the thing is, it's interesting that in China, they used to not allow, I don't know if this is still the case, but pregnant women were not allowed to work with electronic machinery or machinery that emitted EMF, because they knew that it would it would penetrate through the skin and into the fetus. And they were very protective of their unborn children because they were obviously managing their population and stuff like that. So they would issue women that were working with this equipment with lead vests, and they would wear lead vests all day. Now that's a long time ago they were doing that. So yeah, they already had that awareness.
You know, I can't remember where I was reading the research about women whilst pregnant spending time that spent a lot of time at an electric cooker.
Yeah.
Affected the child.
These induction cookers are really bad. In the manufacturer's pamphlets, it warns you to stand 60 centimeters away from the cooker when it's on.
So that's 2 feet, Phil. So you've got to have long arms to cook your dinner then.
Wow. What's going on there? Isn't that mad? Because it causes radiation.
The length of your utensils when you're trying to do a stir fry or something.
Well, this is it. We always have to ask this question because we are gluttons for convenience. You know, yes, we all want that convenience. We want to be able to go to Amazon and just get what we want and have it delivered the next day at a cheaper price than we can get it anywhere else. You know, so we've become so addicted to that we aren't willing to queue up for a shop or wait or, you know, pay a bit more but know where your money's going. You know, it's the same for supermarkets. You know, we've become, and now it's the same for gadgetry, smart this and smart that. Well, we want, and these new phones and the next new iPhone and the next, and all this connectivity and all this, you know, we're just plugging ourselves in deeper and deeper and deeper. And pretty soon we won't be able to retreat. There won't be anywhere to retreat to. So we've got to sort of have a bit of pain of inconvenience. So growing your own food's not quick, you know, it doesn't happen without effort. You've got to know stuff. You're going to make mistakes. You know, it may not taste the same as the one in the supermarket. Not eating, you know, stuff because it's been shipped in from wherever, because you're going to have to start understanding the cost of these things to the planet and making differences. But this is going to cost you more money and more time. And we are constantly pressured for time and money so that our decisions are narrowed down to make those convenient decisions and make decisions without conscience. And then before we know it, we won't have a choice. We won't have a choice to make a conscious decision.
Yes, and I'm afraid to say this, but we're heading there on a very steep, slippery slope right now, where before long, if more of us don't wake up, we're going to lose that ability to choose because it will be chosen for us.
Do you not think there's a big interrupter on its way called Brexit? That's going to interrupt. Climate change and Brexit is going to mean that it may happen sooner than we think. And coronavirus as well is another interrupter. These are interrupters to the trajectory that we've been on.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Huh?
That's what I'm getting at.
Well, they're interrupters to mean that we still have, we may not, you know, we may be forced to make different decisions, but it's stopping us before, you know, we can still change things.
Well, not to get too down the rabbit hole, but those are you know, dark created interrupters.
They're very, well, yeah, I mean, you know, listen, you can't have the light without the dark.
They're agenda created disruptors rather than they've been put out as like, oh, this just suddenly happened. It's like, you know.
But it's all part of nature. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? We're all part of nature. Everything that we consume and touch is from nature, no matter how manufactured it may be. We perhaps interfere with the process of nature, but it is all from nature. So who knows? At the end of the day, you know, dark, light, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
And
I think at the moment we're at a point where we need to be really grateful for this darkness that's coming, because actually without it humanity would not be waking up, and level of waking up that I've seen since the end of March has been absolutely brilliant, and it's really, really exciting that people are going, oh, okay, we can't carry on as we were. So, you know, yes, maybe there's a dark agenda, yes. However, I think the dark agenda's job is to wake us up into the light.
And it's not in control. The dark agenda is not in control.
No.
You know, we think maybe it wants to have control, and we think maybe it's already got a plan to control us and we're trying to escape it, but it's actually not in control, because it's just not in control. It's spun off. It could be setting something off, but those knock-on effects, the ripples in the pond, it cannot control those ripples and the effect those ripples have on people. It can't.
Like you know, like I just said, really, that the kind of the dark agenda, the darkness is coming out, and I bet you any money you like, the darkness did not think it was going to create light.
Right.
Well, yeah.
because that's the ripple that it's affecting, and that for me is so exciting. You know, we wouldn't be having this show if it wasn't for that agenda that had just happened.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
All sorts of things.
This was born out of, okay, we need to chat, we need to touch base, we need to share what's going on, and you know, it's great because we've got America and England, and we're communicating. You know, right now we're communicating across the channel.
Well, even the coronavirus, with the way that the scientists and the communication and the barriers that have been broken down with scientists, and the level of knowledge we've gained about the immune system and the accelerated process that's gone on. Although, yes, it's led to vaccine, blah, 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 but it's led to a whole lot more than that. And again, that's not in control. That situation is anywhere near fixed or controlled at all. And the fact that this vaccine has so much light on it, right? Everyone's watching, there's attention, there's focus, there's light. It's amazing, just as an example, that you know, sharing the information such as, oh, you know, like the Guardian or the Independent put an article out saying Pfizer is indemnified against any adverse events, adverse reactions to the vaccine. So if, you know, and this is news to a lot of people, that this is common, that this is how vaccines get produced. There is indemnity. There's different courts that deal with any adverse reactions, and so many people had no idea. And for years you've got the pro-choice, the pro-informed choice movement saying, hey, tell us what's going on, what is in these vaccines, let's have all the information, and you know, let's tell everybody what the reality is. And they get branded as anti-vaxxers, but they're not. They're just shedding light on the situation. And now that it's become a lot wider, people are like, oh, how come they're indemnified? What does that mean? And I'm like, listen, they're all indemnified. You know, you're not getting any, and they can't quite fathom that out. It makes them question, which is exactly what all the pro-informed, you know, informed choice people do. They're questioning. So now we're getting more people questioning.
So something I learned from a scientist friend of mine yesterday, which I didn't know about, which is great. Even though they're like Pfizer's indemnified, the British government is liable up to a value of £120,000. It's only £120,000 per case. Yeah. But the English government, the British government, have taken the liability. I mean, what does that tell you?
That's the same. That's as it's always been. That's
really?
The same.
Well,
it's the same with
the
American government.
The other day.
Yeah, no, it's the same because the government take on the risk. So what the government do is they say, okay, we'll put this vaccine through, and we need to change our laws to allow you to skip trials, do whatever. There's a whole protocol in place for emergency vaccines. And this is called an emergency vaccine because it's all of them are now emergency vaccines, but this is an emergency vaccine. So,
and what people don't know is, like, right now we're in one of the phases of the trial, and it's going to go on for the next 2 years. But that phase is the people; they are the trial, and like people are going to realize that. So,
yeah.
Phil, there's someone wanting to get in the waiting room. Are we going to let them in?
I let him in. We probably want to close. I think this has been a fantastic show. I think we're up 2 hours now, so.
Sorry, everyone.
No, it's fun. No, it's great.
It's a long one.
We could go on forever. This is fantastic.
Don't be sorry. It's amazing. We'll have you on again just for a little chitty chat.
Yeah. So
I'd love a little chitty chat.
So tell us about how to get hold of you, what your offerings are right now, and then we'll close out the show.
Okay. So I am running my clinic here in Lewes, which is near Brighton, on the south coast of the UK. And I'm going to close for Christmas soon, but you can make an appointment. You can still get in touch with me. My website is vitalizenutrition.co.uk, and is a hyphen between vitalize and nutrition. If you Google my name, Shirah Mustardé, that's mustard with an E at the end. If you Google my name, you'll find me, I'm sure. I run an academy called Nature Cure Academy, and I run an online training for live and dry blood analysis. So if you are interested in knowing more about how you can train in this, using this screening tool, then get in touch and I can help you out. What else do I say? I can do, obviously the blood analysis, you have to be present in my clinic for me to do, but I can do remote consultations for naturopathy and nutrition as well. So, and I can, if people are in different parts of the country, I have a list of people that I've trained. So I have practitioners all over the place and abroad, because the training I offer is global. And we have some of my students are actually online watching. Jacob Moyer, he's one of my students, and Sue, Sue's one of mine as well. So hello to you all if you are watching and tuning in. So yeah, I have Canada, America, Dubai, all over Europe.
Wow.
And New Zealand and Australia, Honolulu. Just had a student from Honolulu, and Poland, and Norway, everywhere. Students all over the place learning this, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that's really, and good on you for shining your light so far. That's brilliant. And Slovenia.
And Slovenia, there's all over. And at the moment, I am writing a nutrition course. So I'm on my next course, which is going to be a diploma course. And I can't wait to finish it, but it's another one of those long processes. And my course is going to be called Natural Nutrition. And it is teaching people about light as well, and EMFs and radiation and the effects on the biology. The part of the prescription that my students will be giving their clients will be a light prescription as well, how to mitigate the effects of EMFs and how to gain as much of the positive light as you possibly can. I've also got oxygen prescription as well, because oxygen is often neglected, because in nutrition you don't eat oxygen, you breathe it in, but it's valuable for life, right? And you've got to make sure you've got enough oxygen and not too much. So understanding how to gauge that and how to prescribe for it as well. And then also I've just written an ebook on for the course as a manual, because I couldn't find a book out there that I could refer students to on the microbiome. So I have been reading papers and all the most relevant research up to date, up to this year, that have been produced on the microbiome and what it is and where it is and how it works. And it's so fascinating, and it's so crucial to our health. It's incredible, actually. So it's going to be a real natural nutrition for the modern person, really. Learning how to cope in this world where there's so much that is not natural.
Yeah.
And we're affected so much by what is not natural. How we can protect ourselves from that and try to bring out that power of nature within us, because nature still is the supreme. you know, the
Still,
supreme thing, philosophy, the supreme. We have to understand nature and understand that it is nature that's changing everything. And so we need to gauge it and understand it and nourish it and work with it all the time, never against it, work with it. And I think we need it now more than ever, you know, and a lot of nutrition courses don't cover all of those aspects. You know, they don't take all of that into account. And it's so important today because we're bombarded with so much more EMF than we ever have been before, and it's invisible, and yet it's having an impact, you know.
a massive. Was my scientist friend said yesterday, there's a guy, have I got the notes somewhere? I haven't got the notes. There's a guy that says we've got 5 more years left of sanity.
Yeah, I actually transcripted the meeting with that guy. I know who you mean, but I can't remember his name.
Something Paul is his name.
Who?
Something Paul.
Yeah, he's big in the physics kind of world and biology world.
So he thinks within 5 more years our brains will be completely fried by Wi-Fi.
You know, and it makes sense because look at who we're voting in, for God's sake. I mean, look at people voting who we're asking to be our leaders. You know, we're not making intelligent decisions, are we? We're not making decisions based on, I mean, not trying to get political here. It's just that, you know, we are diminishing our intelligence through these EMFs, and it shows in the choices that we're making. That's simple.
But I can't, you know, you saying that now, that's the whole kind of world, because what choice have we got? We've got A or we've got B, and we have, you know, and
well, look, there's more of us than there are of them. That's all I can say. But the sooner we smart ourselves up, we will not have the choice. But there are more of us. Out. Yeah. Well, we could rise up. It's just that we're too divided at the minute, and no one's agreeing on anything. So we can't really do it.
We're so divided, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I mean, that's the fragmentation. That's the Tower of Babylon. That's everything falling down, and
all crashing down.
Yeah, and if it has to, and that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree that we are diminishing our intelligence. We're diminishing our children's intelligence because of the amount of exposure at such a young age, which my generation didn't have, but the next generation has.
Yeah.
And that is, we still don't know. So you talk about experiments on vaccines. Well, let's see. We're experimenting on our children right now with EMFs.
You know, if you go to the Chinese thing and you go to Russia banned microwave ovens in public houses in 1970 something.
Wow.
They were banned. They were outright illegalized in the 70s in Russia.
That's incredible. I didn't know that.
So,
I mean, I haven't used a microwave since my student days, but
yeah, well, exactly. But you know, so again, that's that whole thing with Russia, right?
Well, imagine all these children being raised with bottle milk heated in the microwave.
My mates' little boys, they were both they never had, sorry, I rephrase that, all they had was bottled cow's milk heated in the microwave from birth. They didn't have anything else. And I used to really have to bite my tongue, and it was just like, you got any idea what you're doing? What?
I mean, when a body is growing and developing, that's the most damaging time for anything that's bad for your health. It will have effects on the child. So yeah, I mean, these next generations, they are diminishing their intelligence. They're not, you know, we have to go and imagine if you want to go against the grain, you're going to have to not be on the internet. Can you imagine living without access to the internet now?
Oh
God!
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because when I was a kid, we didn't have a telephone, we didn't have a television, we didn't have all we had was a radio.
Libraries.
But we didn't. Where I lived, we didn't even have a library. Or we didn't have any books in the house. We never had a newspaper. All we had was the radio and to go outside and play. That was it when I grew up. And that's not, you know, that's in the scheme of humanity, that ain't very far away.
No, it's just a few generations. It's not that.
Well, it's not even a few. It's one. No. Well, yeah, I guess it would be 2 generations if I had kids.
Now it's 2 generations, but maybe 10, 15 years ago. Just...
You know, in the 70s, that's all we had was a radio, and we didn't even have, like, we had one socket in each room.
Yeah.
There was none of this two-way light switch thing going on. You know, if you go into bed, you have to turn the light off at the bottom of the stairs. There wasn't, you know, there wasn't all this. And you have to get up in the morning and light the, you know, no central heating.
No, exactly. No
No,
no smart central heating with timing and stuff.
The bloody
like that.
doors didn't, you know, my bedroom window, if I didn't have my bedroom window shut by November, it didn't get shut at all until January, or well, till March, till it unfroze. You know, it was just unbelievable.
In my day, we had potatoes for pillows.
You know what? It wasn't far off of that. It was just, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And I, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I look at my children and I think, why aren't you outside climbing trees? You know, that's
Yeah,
what I used to do. But
yeah.
we do have trees for them to climb, but there's a very highly addictive, stimulating screen that offers them whatever they want. I mean, we limit it obviously, and we've done that from a very young age, but sad thing.
It's tough.
Mm.
Well, I think we'd better have another session with you, haven't we?
Well, what more can I do?
We better just have we could just hang out. You know, if Phil and I haven't got a guest, we just hang out and chew the cud, you know, and talk about just what you've been talking about now. We just talk about that stuff and educate each other and enlighten each other and
share some interesting facts, some interesting stuff,
make some stuff up, you know. But that's what we do. So yeah, it's great. It's and it's informative. Phil, anything to say? You've been very quiet.
Very quiet. I think he's been reading a newspaper while we've been.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I was asking lots of questions during the live blood, but then afterwards I was letting you guys talk. I'm like craving to get outside and go on my bike right now. Actually,
oh, because you've got daylight, haven't you? We've got nighttime.
I'm just like, I want to get on my bike. I gotta get on my bike.
Go for it. Right. Go for your bike.
Let's wind up. Shirah, thank you so much. It's been a
pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure again. It's great to hang out. I always enjoy hanging out with you. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yes,
I like hanging out with you too as well.
You're amazing.
Anytime. It's lovely to see you again.
Yep, we'll be down for some blood before long.
So I'm Phil.
And I'm Phil.
This has been the incredible, again, Phil and Phil show with special guest Shirah. So we're here every week on Sunday. Check out our website, philandphil.com. Leave us a very large donation.
Yeah, well done, Phil. That's better.
To take care of us. We appreciate these shows. We appreciate everybody joining in. This has been the fullest show we've had, so that's fantastic. And we're here just to share and evolve with everybody that's joining us and show that we're all just human and we're evolving together. So thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure.
Have a beautiful day, beautiful evening, beautiful week. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.